Hey, Miss Gregory here. Decimal test review under the MAFS.6.NS.2.3. This is the add, subtract, multiply, and divide decimal standard. This covers Chapter 3 in the textbook, lessons listed below, and in the workbook on page 214, there's also a mid-chapter check you might want to check out. Okay, we need to make sure you are ready to study. Headphones, pencil, pen, highlighters, notebook, ready to take notes. Assume that everything I take will be on the test. You definitely want your workbook out with you as well. All right, now we're going to start working some problems. So we're going to pause and you will take notes. These problems are screenshots from different problems in the textbook, but they're all together in the video to help you out. So take a minute to pause and set up the problem. Thank you. Okay, so looking at this problem, a hat costs $10.95 and t-shirt costs $14.20. How much change will you receive if you pay for both of these items with a $50 bill? So this is a multi-step problem. Things that you need to know, is how much the hat costs. Okay, so I highlighted the important keywords in the problem. You're buying a hat and you're buying a shirt. So the first step would be to set up the cost of the hat plus the cost of the t-shirt. Okay, line up your decimals, bring it straight down, carry that over, and your total would be $25.15, but now you're asked to find the change because you're going to pay with a $50 bill. So $50 bill means you're not paying with any coins, any change. It would be $50.00. So again, set this up by lining up your decimal places. So you've got $50 minus $25.15. Keep in mind this is a problem dealing with money. We're going to bring the decimal straight down. Alright, sometimes it's easier to think about this as money when you're doing subtraction and you have the borrowing. So we are talking about 100 pennies minus 15 pennies. That would leave you with 85 cents. Okay, so now you could strike through this and say now you've got $49. It just makes it a little easier. $49 minus $25, and the change you would have would be $24.85 for your final answer. Okay? Make sure if you have not yet that you pause and copy down the steps to solve the problem before you move on. And when you're ready, come back. Okay, the next problem. Sharon buys 14 folders for 75 cents each. How much change will she receive if she pays with $15? Note this is referring to example 6. This goes back to one of the lessons in Chapter 3 we were talking about. So hold on, I'm going to update keywords. Okay, so again, I've highlighted the important parts from the problem. Sharon is buying 14 folders for 75 cents each. How much change will she receive if she pays with $15? So, again, referring to example 6, let's set up the problem. She is purchasing folders that cost 75 cents each. She's buying 14 of them, so you are going to have to do multiple steps. This step, the first step, involves multiplying with decimals. A decimal times a whole number. So you would need to work this out. then your step 2 would be to set up $15.00 minus your total for the 14 folders. So pause, set this up. When you come back, we'll have the setup and the answer. Alright, notice with the first problem where we are multiplying that the numbers have been multiplied, but I need to go back and make sure that because this is a decimal times a whole number, that I have the correct number of decimal places in my answer. I need a total of 2 decimal places in my answer, and then I am going to place my decimal point. This is money, so I am talking about $10.50 would be the total for 14 folders. So now I would bring that $10.50 over here, because now I'm paying with $15, presumably a 5 and a 10. No change, no cents, no coins. So $15 lining up your decimals minus $10.50, then you would be able to find the change. Pause and work this out. Okay, so we multiplied in the first step to find out the cost of the folders. Then we had to subtract decimals in the second step to find out how much change would be provided. And oops, I see I made a mistake. I'm going to fix that now because we can't get $14.50 back. That should be $4.50 back. Sorry guys, Miss Gregory here owning up to the mistake, but at least I caught it. Alright, so I made my subtraction error because I was trying to watch the new Supergirl and do math, so note to you that's a no-no. Pay attention to your math. $15 minus $10.50 would be change of $4.50. Alright, and if you haven't copied this down, pause. If you're ready, move to the next question. Pears cost 92 cents per pound and apples cost $1.10 per pound. Mr. Bonilla bought 3 7/75 pounds of pears and 2 1/10 pounds of apples. How much did he pay for the pears and apples? Explain your answer. So we've got a lot of steps here. I'm going to start with updating what's important. Okay, I tried to do some color coding. The pears price goes with the orange because he bought 3.75 pounds at 92 cents per pound. The apples are coded with red. He bought 2.1 pounds of apples at a cost of $1.10 per pound. We need to find what did he pay for the pears and the apples. So I need to find the cost for the pears. I need to find in a second step the cost for the apples, and then in the third step I need to add both of those together. So I'm going to set this up. Give me a minute. You try to set it up, see if you are correct. Okay, so you can see step number 1 has been set up. You're multiplying and you would need to go through your steps and then put your decimal in the final place. Step number 2, you're setting up for the apples. You need to multiply through and get your final step. So pause here and multiply, come back and check. Okay, so we're back and you can see in step number 1, I multiplied the pounds of pears that were bought times the cost of the pears per pound. And you can see my steps there. In red, the 2 plus 2 is talking about there are 2 decimal places in the pounds and there are 2 decimal places in the money. So I need a total of 4 decimal places to put into my final answer with multiplying. So the total cost of the pears ends up being $3.45. Step 2, I'm showing you the work for multiplying to get the cost for the apples, $1.10 times the pounds. And I did change how I set this up. This time the money was on top. This was all about the placement of there being 3 digits being multiplied by only 2 digits, so that's why it was set up this way with the money first versus the other problem. Again, the 2 plus 1 in red is telling you there are 2 decimal places plus 1 decimal place. I need a total of 3 decimal places in my answer. So the apples cost $2.31. But I am trying to find how much did he pay for the pears and the apples. So the total cost, step 3, would be to add the decimals. Now I'd need to line up the decimal places and add the total cost of pears and apples is $5.76. So you have to keep your decimal rules straight of when to line up the decimals only for adding and subtracting. Pause, make sure you have all of the work here before you move to the next word problem. Alright, this question is asking you to find the average height of the building shown in the table. You can see that off to the right. It is reminding you that to find the average, you would add all the values and then divide by the number of values. This is also called the mean, and it will be talked about in a later chapter. Okay, so we're back. We're lining up our decimals from the chart. Multiple ways that you could do this. And I'm trying to talk and not make mistakes as I go through. You could make an entire list, like I've done here, and add all of them up. Or you could break this down into smaller chunks, especially with these being the same numbers. You could multiply by 2. You could add another group of 2 and then get your total. So several ways you could do this, but ultimately you're adding up decimal points, so you need to line up the decimal and bring your decimal straight down into the answer. Pause and do that. Okay, so I took a couple of the decimals at a time, added them up to get a total of, right here, 7 465 thousandths. Now, my step 2 is I've done the addition, now I've got to do the division, because it said to add all the numbers and then divide. Now, if you look in the chart, I have 5 different buildings, so that means I need to divide by 5. So I need to set up, my divisor is 5, the sum, which was 7.465, goes under the little division house. Now, I need to check, since my divisor is a whole number, I don't need to move anything. I do need to make sure that I walk the decimal up straight into the quotient. Okay, like I did here. Now, you should go through your steps of division, come back and check to see if you get the same answer. Pause here. Alright, so you can see my steps for the division in finding the mean. So the answer here would be 1 493 thousandths is the mean or the average height of the buildings in the table for this problem. Okay, final answer is in feet. So make sure you include with your word problems any measurements. Okay? Alright, pause. Make sure you have everything copied here before moving to the next problem. Okay, this is a very, very important type of word problem. Please, please, please pay attention to what is talked about here. This problem, again, is a problem from the book. Alaska has a coastline of about 6.64 thousand miles. So Alaska is in the orange color. The information about Florida is underlined in blue. Florida has about 1.35 thousand miles of coastline. All right, now in the box is the question that's being asked of you. How many times more coastline does Alaska have than Florida? Okay, well, obviously from comparing the numbers, Alaska is larger, but they want to know how many times more larger. And some of you would look at the problem and see times and think, oh, I'm supposed to multiply. Please do not make that mistake. This is very important here. When the words are pieced together, how many times more, how many times greater, how many times less, the how many times verbiage with those particular words put together like that means to divide to get your answer. So I wrote a little red division symbol out to the side of that. All right, another important thing to pay attention to and how they're asking you to give your answer is it says round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So this is your permission. You don't have to keep dividing forever. Looking for anything to repeat or continue until you get a zero remainder, you are allowed to stop and round it to the nearest tenth. So this is a dividing with decimals problem, and we'll review how to round to the proper place value. So we're going to set this problem up. Make sure that you are setting up the problem on your paper exactly as you see it here. Now I'm going to change back to the black color so that it can be seen. All right, so what you need to figure out is you've got a huge Alaska coastline. Draw a crude little picture here. I know that is not exactly how Alaska looks, okay? And then we've got the Florida coastline, which is smaller, and it represents this number, okay? So I wanted to draw the picture to kind of help you see that Alaska is larger, and we're trying to basically figure out how many Florida coastlines can we fit into the Alaska coastline. Okay, so we're going to set this up. The order matters, okay? So we have to make sure that the divisor is Florida and the dividend, in this case, is Alaska, okay? So as far as setting up this problem, we have our divisor, we have our dividend. Now I'm going to again change to some other color so that you can see my steps here. Let's remember, if I have a divisor that has decimals, I have to make that divisor a whole number by moving the decimal all the way to the end. Sorry, that's very hard to see. Move the decimal to the end of the number to make it a whole number. And remember, we said the decimal in the divisor is the boss. If it tells you to move 2 times, then you also move the dividend the same amount. In this case, we only need to move it 2 times. Now, we do need to make sure we've moved the decimal in the divisor, we've moved the decimal in the dividend, and now we need to walk straight up the decimal into the quotient, okay? Now, I always tell you guys that you must rewrite the problem without all of the arrows. I want to see the arrows. I want to see that you're moving it correctly, because you don't want to do that in your head. But then I kind of want you to take that extra step of cleaning it up and showing that it is whole numbers. Now it's 135 and 664. We don't want to forget, though, that the decimal is at the end of 664, and then we also need to walk that decimal up into our quotient. Now you can begin your steps of division. We said the steps are, does McDonald's serve cheeseburgers raw? Which means to divide, multiply, subtract, check your work, bring down the next number, and repeat the steps until you're done. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, work the problem, you work it, come back and check. Okay, I want you to notice in my division that I have stopped my quotient at 4.91. I did not continue with the division down here at the bottom because I'm going back to the directions that said round to the nearest tenth. So, because I need to round to the nearest tenth, you need to first underline the tenths place. Then you need to tell me who is knocking at the back door. One is knocking at your back door. You are not going to round up. You're going to stay where you are. So if I am rounding, this is going to stay at 4.9. Now this is a word problem, so the answer would be Alaska's coastline is about 4.9, 4 9/10 times larger than Florida's coastline. But if I'm rounding it to the nearest tenth, that's what I would round it to. I can't put 4.91 because that's hundredths place. It continues to go, but I'm allowed to stop dividing because I'm going to round it to the nearest tenth. So the answer would be 4.9. Again, make sure you have everything copied here before we go to the next slide. This is, again, just a reminder, a very important word problem and tricky. So make sure you have everything copied. Again, another problem from the book about how many times more. Again, reading from the table, making sure you are choosing the correct numbers. We're talking about a problem about sports car colors, and it is again giving you the permission to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. Okay, so let's set up part A and get going. Alright, notice again that this is silver color is larger divided by red, the color that is smaller. So the divisor is red, 9/100ths, and the dividend is silver, 2/10ths. I'm showing you with the red arrows that I had to move over twice in the divisor and the dividend. Notice I had to add the 0 into my dividend. Then I rewrote the problem. Now I'm really solving it as 9. How many times will 9 go into 20? So pause here, make sure you have it set up correctly, and finish your division. Okay, and working out this problem, again, I've stopped the division once I realized that it's going to repeat a number. 2.2, it's going to keep repeating 2's. So again, I am going to need to round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so the tenths place is here. Who's knocking at your back door? It's a 2 because the 2's are repeating. So what I'm going to do is say that my answer is about 2.2 times greater. So how many times more respondents? 2.2 times more respondents chose silver rather than red. Now let's work part B, and you can see I drew a little squiggly line down the middle to separate where I would show my work for problem A versus where I would show my work for problem B. Let's see what you can do to set it up and find the keywords and then come back and check to see if you were correct. This would be your time to try it on your own. So pause the video, see if you can do it correctly. Then, of course, please check your work to make sure you did it correctly. Okay, back with problem B. A little tricky because of the wording again. You got to be a good reader for detail when you're working math problems. So notice that this time it says respondents that chose either silver or black, which means you need to add silver and black. So over in the table in purple, I circled both of the numbers for silver and black. In purple, I set up under problem B, lining up the decimals because I'm adding them. I added both of the colors and got 34 hundredths. Red is still the same. Red is still your divisor. So I set up the problem here. 0.09 represents red. 0.34 represents both silver and black together. So again, with the red arrows, I'm showing you that I have a decimal in the divisor. I need to move it twice to make it a whole number. I need to do the same in my dividend, which is move it twice. I've got to show the decimal at the end and bring it up into my quotient. So when I rework the problem here, I've got 9 into 34. And I stop short with my division when I realize that the numbers will start repeating. So it is 3.7 with the little bar over it. The bar notation signifies that the number 7 will continue repeating. So if I'm allowed to round to the nearest tenth, the 7 in the tenths place is underlined. Who is knocking at the back door? It's 7. 7 tells you to round up, so what I would be choosing as my final answer would be, the answer is 3.8 times as many respondents chose either silver or black compared to red. Okay, again, make sure you have all the information copied before you move on. Alright guys, sorry the video was long, but I tried to get in as many problems as I could to help you get ready for your test on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with decimals. Hopefully you took good quality notes and you will be ready to look over it and pass the test like a boss. If you didn't copy it down, now's your chance to go back, watch it from the start, and copy your notes. Don't forget, you need to have the notes. Thanks. Good luck. Signing out, Miss Gregory.